Hello everybody, how's it going? This is Kaz. I want to talk about a piece of Japanese literature, and I wanted to do this a lot, but I have been focusing on my content for 日本人の人々, but I want to come back to this issue of how I can help you guys who are interested in Japanese language and culture. So today I want to talk about Takuboku Ishikawa. He was a poet, and let's take a look at his bio. I'm going to go over one of my favorite tankas by him. Everybody knows this one, so if you know this, everybody will appreciate discussing it with you, I hope. Takuboku Ishikawa is from Iwate Prefecture, and he was born in 1886, and he was like a prodigy when he was small, but he quit middle school and went to Tokyo to be a poet. And he moved around. He spent a lot of time in Tokyo. He spent a lot of time in Hokkaido. The problem was he mostly remained poor, and he didn't really become super famous till late. And he died so young in 1912. He was only 26, and it was because of lung disease. And one of his kids died too as an infant, and everything was so sad about his life. Okay, so that's the background. Let's take a look at the next slide, where I want to pose this question to you all and myself. Is his poem universally appealing? If so, yes, but if not, why not? Is what I will be asking throughout. Today I'll just talk about one poem, but let's go to his poem number one. ふるさとのnamari 懐かし停車場の人ごみの中に so聴きにゆく. Okay, and this is my direct English translation. It doesn't sound poetic or anything. I just wanted to convey the meaning of each word as accurately as I can. It feels nostalgic to hear my hometown accent into the middle of the crowd at the train station. I go to here. Let me do this word by word. ふるさとの my hometowns. Namari, this is like accent or dialect. 懐かし, nostalgic. Teishaba, the train station. Although it doesn't say train, it's a station. And back then it was really a train station. Stations, no means 人ごみの中に. 人ごみ is a crowd. の中に into the crowd, into the middle of the crowd. Okay, naka is middle. So, I think in modern Japanese we would say soreo, but in this poem he goes so, that, kiki ni, to listen, yuku, I go. So that's the word by word translation of mine. Again, I want to focus on this concept of furusato, furusato no, right? That means hometown, but furusato has to be necessarily rural and countryside. So if you come from Tokyo, you don't have furusato exactly. I do have my furusato because I came from Hiroshima, where everything was so countryside, kind of countryside dish. And this reflects, I misspelled it here, this reflects the structure of the labor market. So people from countryside, especially so in his time, had to, or even today, have to travel or move to big cities to get jobs. You get stuck in big cities, and also there's this structure issue of holiday schedule in Japan. Only twice a year, people get big or long holiday breaks. One right now at the time of Obon, around August 15th. I hear in Tokyo their Obon season is out earlier. And the other one is around the New Year's Day. That's a major one. That's the actually major one. So we only have two big holiday weeks that are so prolonged, that are long enough to allow people in big cities to come back to their hometown. So that's like really creating the situation of you can't go home all the time. So my question, I want you to be thinking, is this universal? Is this also the same in my country, in my society? You know, wherever you live, you may live in America, Europe, or South America, Australia, wherever you are, Middle East, Africa, you know. So another issue of creating this concept of furusato, meaning hometown, which is necessarily rural, is the Japanese education system, which takes away kids from countryside and put them in big cities. If you really like to go to college, most of the time people have to think of moving away. So that's really annoying to me because it's like breaking families apart, and I don't know if that's happening in your society or if this is just unique to Japan. And that's the background of this poem, right? Okay. Also, furusato in Japan, in my mind especially, is where you feel like you have half of your classmates still living, which may or may not be true, but I have this idea that, yeah, if I go back to Japan to visit my hometown or to live in my hometown, I know where people live and maybe half of them are still there. So I think I know for a fact that that's not the case in the US. If my wife goes back to her hometown of Ohio, it looks like the landscape is composed of flat land and freeways, and I don't think there's like recognizable homes of your friends, and you don't expect your friends to be living there. But this depends on where you come from. But generally speaking, I think in the US, do you feel like half of your classmates are still living in your hometown if you come from countryside? So I think this concept of furusato, or this word furusato, may be very specific and unique to a society like Japan, where we have these, I don't know, structural and historical, conditions. Or next is the word or the concept of namari. Okay, so this guy, Takuboku, is thinking, oh, I miss my namari. And namari, I think you can say it's an accent or dialect. I think it's more like a dialect. Namaru means it's a verb. Namaru is a verb. It's degenerated. It becomes something bad or disorganized or destroyed. So namari is necessarily something a little bit negative in Japanese, at least. And we feel like standard Japanese is the Japanese language, and somehow dialects are the ruined, destroyed, degenerated version of the standard Japanese, which is actually not true at all, because the standard Japanese is the artificially created version based on, I don't know, Japanese, right? So is this really specific to Japanese circumstances where we have this concept of namari? In your language or in your culture, do you use this similar concept? Or do you have the idea that countryside languages are somehow bad and spoiled version of what people are speaking on TV? I'm not sure. Okay, and this our sense of this is really a result of modernization of Japan. We felt like we have to really quickly create this official Japanese language to stand firmly as an independent and modern nation, as you know, Japan was struggling to come out during the Meiji period. What is sad is we have a lot of dialects, and those dialects are not really receiving due respect and attention. This may be happening in your culture too. Another issue that's specific to his case is that he came from Tohoku region, and their dialects are so differentiated even among themselves. I'm sure they're similar, but I heard that in the northern part of Japan, Hokkaido is a different issue because many people immigrated to Hokkaido, but towards the northern part of Japan, if you go to a village right next to you, they may have different expressions and different styles of speaking, which is not the case in other parts of Japan. Like in Hiroshima, our dialect is pretty much kind of like understood throughout the prefecture or just the general region. So there's that here, and that means that I'm not sure if that can happen in other societies where you have such a place where you live. Your neighbors in the next village may have different expressions. Does that happen? In fact, in Hiroshima, in my place, where I grew up, there are different terms or different names for different types of beetles, kabutomushi and kuwagata. So that can happen in places, I think. I thought a little bit more about this, and I realized that sometimes we have different names for plays, children's plays. For example, Inside is a ball game that we used to play all the time. That kind of name, probably because this type of terminology is determined by kids, not by by the internet or by mass media. So those things can vary by region, even in Hiroshima too. Or the names for insects can vary because we don't check the name of insects all the time just because all the time based on what people on TV say. Like I remember buto is a bunch of flies roaming around in one chunk, and they're like an entity of its own and moving around on the field. We call them buto, tiny flies. So is this situation universal or unique to Japan, where the concept of namari exists, which means dialects are considered like a second-class language, even though those are the original languages of Japan. And that's kind of sad. In fact, from my interest in English education in Japan, the way we speak dialects is actually similar to speaking English, French, and Spanish because we resonate deeply in our throat. And we often use in Hiroshima our own dialect, my dialect. We often start a sentence with I, just like in English, although standardized Japanese very often omits the use of subjects like I, you, to give you a flavor of that. If I speak in Hiroshima Ben right now, the second, washi ne, meaning I, ittanyo eiga mini, went to see a movie, like that. We often say washi or anta, meaning you. So it's a pity that we don't respect local dialects, and because if we really look at our local dialects, we can probably speak English better by noticing that, oh, you can speak English just like you speak dialects. So that's a long story, though. That's going to be a long story. Just talking about this poem is creating a humongous video. I don't even feel like editing this, so I'm going to just put it on YouTube, I think. So next one is the concept of teishaba station, right? This is a train station. And in Japan, train stations have a lot of tourists. And I'm not sure if that's true in the US, at least. I'm not sure if I go to a nearby subway station, there's lots of people who are commuting. But I feel like Japanese train stations have a lot of tourists as well as people who are commuting. And that's the place where people are. Do you have this idea that, oh, if I want to see a lot of people, you go to the train station? I'm not sure if that's the case in all countries. And would you find people with same accent, dialect, meaning, would you find, if you go to the nearest station today, would you find people who came from your hometown? I feel like I would if I go to a big station in Tokyo, and if I try to listen, I will hear a bunch of people who are speaking Hiroshima Ben kind of dialect, I think. And I think in Japan, train is where you can find people with structural equivalence, meaning you may not know them, but they have the same kind of social standing. You come from the countryside, you probably are working the kind of jobs that you also do, and they have their old parents living in countryside. You don't know them, but you have the same kind of experience. So the concept of a train station where a lot of people gather together, and you can find people with the same kind of background, we have such a place in Japan as the train station, but I'm not sure if that's true in other countries. So let me know, what do you think? So this Tanka is about Takuboku going to the station just to listen to his kind of dialect, but also he went there because he's feeling like really bad. He doesn't feel like he's succeeding in Tokyo. And he thinks of his hometown, but also here is the point. He can't even go back to his hometown because there's another notion in Japan. And I want to know if in your culture, if there's such a concept. You have this concept of 故郷に錦を飾る, meaning when you are coming back to your hometown after a while, after many years of working outside it, I mean, working in a big city, you're supposed to be coming home with success. But I guess Takuboku knows that he's not really going home with success. So he misses his hometown, his people's dialect or accent, but he feels like he can't go home because he's not really a big shot. And it may be even worse because people in his hometown know him as a genius. You know, is this universal or unique to Japan and Takuboku's time? Is what I have been asking myself as I read this poem. And let me conclude this long video by saying this. So my take is that Takuboku's poems are appealing to everyone, as people today suffer from imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is like you're doubting your abilities and feeling like a fraud. I got this from the internet. Okay, so because of what you see on Facebook and Instagram, where your friends and acquaintances are having great time vacationing and they have great jobs. So today people wonder, am I like a failure? And that's what people think all the time, I think. And that's what this guy is about. Takuboku Ishikawa was like a genius of the village, and he went to school and he did really well, but as he tried to make it big in Tokyo, he felt like a failure. He wasn't doing well. He wasn't really getting recognition quick enough, and he died so young. Although he became famous, and he has become so famous today. This is just one Tanka poem, and there's so many of them from which you can read this kind of message. And so, yeah, that's my conclusion. His poems are universally appealing because that's what we feel today. But this is another conclusion of mine. There are so many specific historical conditions, contexts that makes us feel like, oh, this is uniquely Japan, yeah. Or you may be thinking, oh, yeah, this is true too in my country. So I think his poems will help us understand Japan better, or help us understand other cultures better. So this has become a video of about 20 minutes, and I'm going to just put it out there and see what people say or think. Let me know. Do you have also poets like him in your cultures too? That's my question too.